Welcome back. Again, I'm Frank Atita, Vice President of Digital Health Insights, the content team at Chime. And the session that we're moving on to now is, during my travels, I had the opportunity to be to moderate a dinner at in Philadelphia, and had the pleasure of meeting Monique St. John, who is the CTSO at CHOP in Philadelphia, and it made me think. I've been in this business for a while. I think some of the questions are obvious of what makes a difference between pediatric and children's hospitals versus just a general hospital. So I thought it might be interesting for those in the audience who might not be in one of those dedicated hospitals like a children's hospital, but still obviously have caretakers and patients who are children, where we can explore the cybersecurity aspects of what makes it a little bit different, or maybe a lot different. So I have the pleasure of having Monique and Gordon Groschl, who is the CISO of and Director of Healthcare Technology at Texas Children's Hospital. I always I'm a marketing guy, so uh, it's always fun to see that Texas Children's is the number one children's hospital in the country. I think the Philly people might have an interesting point of view on that as well. So, but at the same time, it's great to have two of the best in the business here as it relates to children's and pediatric care for us today. So, without further ado, I'll let Monique and Gordon introduce themselves, and I'll be off the air for a while, and then I'll come back for Q&A. Thank you again for joining us today, and we're looking forward to the session.
Great. Thank you, Frank. Hi, everyone. My name is Monique St. John. As Frank mentioned, I'm the Chief Information Security Officer at Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. And even though Texas Children may be number one according to certain publications, Gordon and I frequently collaborate. So within security, there's no number one. We absolutely just look at the children and the patients that we serve. So just a little bit about Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. We're also known as CHOP. So throughout this, you'll hear me stating CHOP, and that's the acronym for Children's Hospital of Philadelphia. We are a global pediatric health system with three prongs to our mission: mission of excellence in pediatric care, quality professional education, and research innovation, which is our North Star. We serve about 50 states, all 50 states, 65 countries. We have 3 hospitals and over 50 care network sites. So I hand it off to Gordon.
Yeah, good afternoon, everybody. I appreciate to be part of this. My name is Gordon Groschl. I'm the Chief Information Security Officer and Director of Healthcare Technology Management at Texas Children's. We are the largest pediatric organization in the United States. We serve approximately 1,000 beds in the larger Houston area, and then have also a hospital in Austin, and over 200 clinics that are kind of spread out across Houston, Austin, and the southeast Texas region. We're also partnered with Baylor for Global Hope, which is a clinic system that provides clinics and pediatric care, and also female care in Africa and Eastern Europe. So we're doing quite a bit in that space as well. And similar to CHOP, our focus is on healthcare for children and women. And then we also have a quite significant research focus. In addition to all that, we also have a health plan that serves the, I would say, most vulnerable population of children in Texas. And so we're heavily engaged there as well to provide insurance services to those high-risk population children.
Thanks, Gordon. So let's dive in. We'll start right at the foundation, the threat landscape. What are some common threats or risks that you see, especially in pediatric healthcare?
Yeah, that's a great question, Monique. So, I mean, generally speaking, I would say that the pediatric threat landscape is similar to the adult hospital threat landscape. However, I think there are a couple of unique areas that are geared towards pediatrics specifically. First of all, data value. Threat actors can get a lot more money from stealing pediatric patients' records than adult records. One of the reasons is that children typically don't have a credit score, which means they have a clean slate and allows threat actors to monetize those records quite a bit. The other area is that, and you just follow the news over the years, right? Like when, for example, the Children's Hospital was hit by a ransomware in Canada, the I would say public pressure and the public I would say attention to ransomware attacks and large scale cybersecurity incidents in the pediatric sector is quite a bit higher than in the adult sector. So meaning the impact to the organization and the pressure to respond and then recover, and obviously the regulatory scrutiny could be quite a bit higher on pediatric organizations than on adult organizations. I mean, obviously the operational impact is going to be devastating regardless of adult or pediatric care organizations, but there is, I think, a difference in the public response to an incident just because we're talking about children, and that's a highly vulnerable population of society, and I would say ours as a society, obviously, when something happens to anything related to children, the focus is incredibly higher than in comparison to the adult side of things. As a pediatric organization, we deal with HIPAA, but there are other, I would say, regulatory requirements that come into play. So there is obviously a significant, I would say, impact on the regulatory side that as a pediatric organization, we always have to be aware of, and makes dealing with cybersecurity incidents in some cases quite a bit more complicated, or, in comparison to other, I would say, organizations. Now, we all deal, I think, with the same problems in terms of the ransomware specter that is hanging over all of our heads. And so maybe, Monique, you can talk a little bit about ransomware and cyber resilience and from a pediatric perspective.
Yeah, I think, Gordon, you really hit home when you talked about wanting to return to operations, especially connecting with pediatric healthcare and dealing with patient care, and those patients being children are at the center of our mission. So maybe think about our cyber resiliency in regards to CHOP. We had a initiative over the last 2 years where we really focused on, as a health system, cross-functionally getting together and organizing a task force around cyber resiliency, and each department creating their own continuity plan to ensure that children receive care in the event of a downtime. And that could be a technical downtime no matter what, but specifically around a cyber incident. But we all know that technical downtime happens frequently. It doesn't have to be cyber related. So we wanted those continuity plans to be across the board. It didn't have to be cyber. It just, in general, was there an impact of technology being out to our clinicians? So we focused on continuity plans with this task force with executive level presence, and each department creating a plan and testing the plan. That was pretty key, that we tested them and just didn't put the plan on a shelf. We wanted to make sure that were continuously improving and also building that muscle memory, because we didn't want to just have a conversation when there was a crisis. We wanted to make sure that we were practicing those conversations. So I would say we achieved amazing results, and we're continuing to practice. But when I talk about results, Gordon, we specifically within digital and technology services, we created 30 downtime plans for our different portfolio: application, network, infrastructure, security. And we tested over 30 tabletops to make sure that those continuity plans could be executed. And then as we went enterprise-wide, the emergency preparedness team drove the departments to create 150 downtime plans, and over 150 tabletop exercises were executed over a 6 to 8 month period. So we've really concentrated on the cyber resiliency piece, and it's a continuous effort. As I mentioned, it's not just set it and forget it. We really need to make sure that we're constantly evaluating our processes, our procedures, and how we're responding during a crisis. So thanks for asking that question. So if I can shift gears, there wouldn't be a conversation around cybersecurity without talking about artificial intelligence. So how is Texas balancing risk and innovation, especially around artificial intelligence?
Yeah, great question, Monique. It is really, it's been a journey, I would say, ever since ChatGPT, was birthed, so to speak, and we had our little Internet 3.0 moment. We have been in a frantic frenzy of activity trying to align our internal people, process, and technologies to deal with artificial intelligence. But let me highlight one important aspect that I really talk a lot about is when ChatGPT hit the internet and became a public phenomenon, Texas Children's was already utilizing AI for many years. We built a sepsis model in 2018 or early 2019. So we've been using artificial intelligence way before I would say this AI craze started. I think the world maybe has, for the world, this may have looked differently, but I think many organizations were already using AI in some sort of form or fashion. We went through a very concentrated effort to develop first a governance model in partnership with our legal department, privacy and compliance, to get a policy out there that kind of defines what does ethically and secure adoption of artificial intelligence at Texas Children's look like. And it defined the parameters and the rules, if you will, at a high level as to how are we going to use and adopt AI as an organization. And so that policy has now gone through 3 different iterations since in its inception. We have added a AI governance committee that has representation from all different areas. That includes clinical, business, IT, cybersecurity, legal, privacy compliance, enterprise risk. Even audit is represented there. And so every, I would say, net new project that has that is clinical facing has to go through that AI governance model committee, where we review that proposal from all different angles to minimize the risk that we're exposing the organization and make sure that we're meeting all of our, I would say, regulatory requirements and legal requirements. Why is this? I want to stop at the legal requirements here for a second, because one of the things that happened after ChatGPT came out is the federal government kind of sidestepped this whole AI conversation. And so it opened the door for state governments to develop their own, I would say, AI bills. And I think at some point I've been a part of the AHA work group in Texas. There were over 30 different bills in the House in Texas alone that was dealing with AI and adoption of AI. And they recently passed actually one of those 30 that comprehensively defines how artificial intelligence has to be used in Texas. And so when we talk about, AI, it's not just a technical problem. That's very much so a legal and compliance problem. And I think the governments across all the different states are wrestling with this topic and are passing their own laws and versions of laws to deal with artificial intelligence, putting a lot of, I would say, constraints on innovation, right? So for us, for example, it meant that we had to go back and look at all of our processes, make sure that we are actually meeting the requirements that Texas specifically outlined. And I can tell you that it was not making us any faster in terms of adopting AI, even though the organization has a unstoppable appetite to utilize AI. And so our I would say AI program is really built around, first we started with governance, right? Then we built technical capabilities around getting visibility into where we're utilizing AI and what is the AI doing and how is it accessing data, if there are any I would say misuse, abuse going on, put guardrails around that, and ultimately get that oversight not only from a governance perspective, but also from a technical perspective to allow us to not only say like, okay, we have vetted something and we can put it in place, but then also have the proof on the other end of this conversation that allows us to say like, yes, we're continuously monitoring how AI is used at Texas Children's. So that's kind of what we have been doing over the last, I would say, 2+ years, and it's definitely keeping us busy. So what is CHAP doing in this space?
So we're doing a lot of similar things, Gordon, around people, process, and technology. One, the AI Governance Committee, which is a cross-functional group of leaders, meets regularly, monthly, to understand what new submissions are coming in, talking through with them, really focusing on what can we leverage internally versus externally public-facing AI sites. So we've created an internal CHOP GPT and other systems and features and functionality of some of our platform play vendors have really grown AI features that we are leveraging. And the AI Governance Committee helps evaluate that in a thoughtful way, especially with security, legal, our data analytics teams, privacy, and I could go on, clinical research. They're all at the table having a joint conversation of what's in the best interest of CHOP. How do we innovate and balance the risks, because it's not just security, with what the institution needs. We've also, a couple of other things that I wanted to mention, updated contract language to make sure that any new vendors, we were specifically calling out AI and AI features and the use of our data, that we would need prior approvals before any using of data in models. And I think that's important and something that potentially is overlooked just within the rush of getting something in. So we have a data security protection addendum that we utilize with AI language in there. The other thing is we also have a third-party security evaluation. Once a vendor is identified and identified to onboard, we evaluate that vendor from a security protection standpoint. 16 different elements. It's a third-party contractor that does this evaluation. When I say contractor, it's a vendor that provides the service, and it's part of our third-party risk management service. But with the development and the increase in AI, we wanted a holistic view. So we implemented this vendor also with AI type scenarios and use cases, and it's proved fruitful to evaluate the entire picture of that software and the model that we're looking at. So obviously this is an evolving space. And what I would just say in summary is it takes a village. It's not just one person evaluating and providing value. It's everybody within the organization that is earmarked to be a thought leader in this space.
Yeah, Monique, you bringing up some really good points there. Specifically risk assessments. We all depend on third parties in this space, and so having a good and solid risk assessment process that understands the unique aspects in terms of the risks related to artificial intelligence is really key when evaluating and bringing on new vendors. The interesting thing is it's almost scary at all the existing vendors because everybody's now embedding, almost like an arms race, AI in their products, and they're moving all very, very fast, often without very little or no notification that they're changing these things. So there's a lot of stress and pressure on us as a customer to actually keep track of all these changes and making sure we understand the impact to us as an organization from a data privacy perspective and a data movement perspective. And and how all these AI capabilities are being basically embedded into their product. It's a challenging, fast moving target, if you will, that keeps our third-party risk management programs quite busy, to be honest. So, oh, go
I
ahead.
would I would just agree with you, Gordon. It's never ending, and it's very moment in time as well. You'll find out about a new feature and have to investigate it and pivot. And that's part of our roles, right, as risk managers to evaluate it. But you're right, it's a fire hydrant of new features and technologies. And just because they're an existing vendor doesn't necessarily mean it's good to go. So
Yeah.
we constantly need to evaluate and assess the risk and provide the facts.
Yeah, and I have actually a good example without naming names. We had a vendor who was embedding AI capabilities in the product, and when we started asking questions, we realized they were using our data to train their models, and they were doing that training in Europe. And so at that point, there was a lot of concerns, obviously, because it would mean that PHI data potentially would be transferred to Europe for data model training. So those are all like challenges that we're now facing in this immensely fast-moving field that AI has created. Since we've been talking about AI and agentic AI, identity management is a critical aspect of artificial intelligence and creates all kinds of new challenges. So, from your perspective, what's working, what's not working with identity management in high pressure care environments?
So that's a loaded question. What I'll say is it really comes down to getting the right strategy in place, the permissions in place, and around governance, around processes, around monitoring, and just keeping pace, like you had mentioned. What about agentic AI? But overall, healthcare needs to really evolve their identity management system, especially around the different types of accounts. So we have user accounts, we have non-human accounts, we have service accounts, we have agentic AI, and we need to focus on what permissions that we provide them and how we're providing them. Also focusing on privileged account management and how we're protecting all identities across the continuum. And of course, just-in-time access. But bottom line is no trust, but always verify. But let's kind of tug at agentic AI. I think it's really getting to the basics. I know that there was a session previous regarding agentic AI, so I'm not going to go into what it is or the benefits of it, but we really need to provide guardrails to those identities. We need to make sure that there's governance. We need to make sure that there's monitoring, that there's auditing, and if necessary, that something's flagged and escalated to a human to review. So it's not just we set it and forget it. Ideally, we would treat these identities as privileged users and make sure that there's controls in place, just like privileged account management for the other identities that we have in place. So if people are dabbling in this, if institutions are dabbling in this, my recommendation would just start evaluating their identity governance and their processes around agentic AI and other identities and what they're doing in this space to evolve with it. Because if you don't evolve with it, it's going to be legacy at some point, and you're going to be dealing with some very significant risks. So making sure things are auditable, logging are one of or two of my key recommendations here, along with the governance aspects, Gordon.
Yeah, you're making some great points there, Monique. I feel like, AI is almost like an accelerator in that sense that if you have weaknesses in your processes and your governance structure, it's going to amplify the issue and it's going to make it even bigger. And so it's really so important that you have very mature human and non-human identity management processes and have the appropriate visibility, which means the security operations needs to be spot on, and you need to be able to ingest all those logs and have the intelligence behind it to surface any kind of abnormal abuse of identities or misuse of identities. All that sounds like something we always should have had, right? Like in many organizations, we're probably at various states, but with AI, it's just being amplified, this problem. It's just getting even bigger.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And, one thing that I'll just mention is providing these guardrails around identity really connect into some pediatric foundational things of quality and safety. That's a piece of our mission and our strategy to make sure that we are constantly looking at that and staying ahead of it. So evolving really connects into that strategy piece. So, Gordon, any other questions for me?
Yes. Like to close this out, like if we look back to last year, what was the biggest, most impactful risk reduction effort that you have implemented last year?
It's curious. You had mentioned security ops and how important that is. I would say the most impactful risk thing that I did to reduce risk, or CHOP did to reduce risk, is partner on specific technologies and vendors relating to security operations. Because it's not just about the internal teams. Part of our risk strategy is to ensure that we have expert vendor partners side by side with us, ensuring that we're driving and evolving and strategizing on how to reduce risk and respond in a more efficient way and an automated way. So I would say that's the most significant thing, knowing that it's a marathon, it's not a sprint, that we need partners to complement our services. How about you?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think the biggest thing that the team accomplished this year is we finished up our zero trust implementation in the data center, which was a really big effort for us to reduce the risk of a large scale cyber attack by limiting basically the abilities of a threat actor to laterally move inside of our network and our data center. That was really a big accomplishment. Took a village to get there, between all the application teams, the end users, the downtime, the maintenance windows that we had to go through to make this happen. But I'm very excited that we were able to close this out in the last 12 months.
That's amazing. Congratulations. That's a significant lift. It's great. Frank, any questions?
We do have a couple quick questions in the time we have left. One from an anonymous attendee, cybersecurity, of course. How do you how do you solve the challenge of healthcare systems that do not allow for automated provisioning and single sign-on?
Wow.
Might be another seminar, right?
That's a tough one, right? Like, I mean, my personal recommendation would be to really sit down with the business stakeholders and try to outline the risks that you're inheriting or accepting by not going through automated provisioning and multi-factor authentication, and what the potential business impact could be if one of these risks materializes. I think cybersecurity is not a technical conversation, or it should not be a technical conversation. It should be about business risks that we're trying to mitigate to an acceptable level. So understanding what is acceptable, and are we okay with accepting that level of risk, that we're not don't have these foundational controls in place. I think that's the conversation I would have in that scenario.
Right. I would 100% agree. We present the facts, we present options with business leaders, and we provide the business the information to make a decision, an informed decision. So hopefully that helps. We're never going to mitigate every risk to zero. So it's all about providing the facts and a risk-based approach.
One
Even
more
though
here. Go
I
ahead.
was going to say, Frank, even though it may raise your blood pressure, it is important to provide those facts because in the end, like Gordon says, it's a business decision.
Understood. Any specifics, specific tactics to address proxy access? I'm outside of my skill set here, so I can't even clarify the question.
Yeah, so proxy access is a very wide term. So I don't know if there is a way to follow up. I'm happy to follow up and get more details on the question if that's
Yeah, we'll
possible.
be doing a post. We'll be doing a post conference chat so that we can answer some of those.
Awesome. Yeah, I'm happy to come back, try to get an answer on that one.
I just had one closing question myself. The enemy from within. I mean, we're talking about Chat GPT and everything that's embedded into EMRs, EHRs with artificial intelligence. How are you guys handling this whole issue of shadow AI, where it's running rampant throughout the organization, and because they don't like the one that's on the Microsoft platform, they're using their own at home. Is that a problem or is it overstated?
Yeah, so we actually monitor all internet access by our employees, so we understand exactly who is using what, and we do not block. I know conversationally, between the different children's hospitals, we have had conversations with other people doing. Some people actually are doing blocking access to, let's say, Claude or ChatGPT or whatever the flavor of AI that they don't want their employees to access. We have opted not to do this. However, we monitor and then educate. Right. So if we're catching you and you're in ChatGPT, right, like frequently, then we reach out to you, try to understand, what are you trying to solve, and then try to direct you into the, I would say, direction that we want you to
Great
go.
plan. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah,
Monique?
and I would say that there is no one perfect answer, no silver bullet to this, but I would say the struggle is real. The evaluation of these sites is real. We do restrict some sites. We have a tool that tells us what's the riskiest sites out there,
Mhm.
and there are some of the ones we do restrict. But as I mentioned earlier, we did create a few internal applications for individuals to use, and we point people to those. And if they need externally public facing applications, we talk to them about the risk, what their use case is, because again, we're risk managers. We provide the facts, we provide options, and we have the business decide, okay, this site is needed for this purpose, or it's not needed. So it's a constant conversation with the AI governance committee at SHOP.
It's great. That's great. This was a great session, exactly what I had hoped for when I recruited Monique, and then she recruited Gordon. This is fantastic. Gordon, there's one thing that you mentioned that is sticking in my head, and we don't have to discuss it now. That children are a bigger target because they don't have a credit score. So I'm so I'm still processing that, but I think that's there's something in there that I want to talk to you about. So
Awesome.
great. Thank you for your patience
Thank
and
you.
pulling this together and for a great interactive session. We're getting compliments just on the way it flowed between the two of you as opposed to having me clear
Gordon and I
clear
do this all
present.
the time, Frank.
I figured you
Yes.
would. I figured you would. You do a great job at it. Okay, so we're